Hello and welcome back to the Exist Better YouTube channel. Today we're talking about what we've been talking about on the big, what do they call it? Macro scale, the big picture scale. We're bringing it down into the micro, which is the personal level. And so we're talking about masculine and feminine integration, but not culturally, not societally, but individually. Okay, so I'm going to break this down into two parts, obviously, because there's like a whole spiel for women and a whole spiel for men. If we're doing this by the traditional Anima and Animus ways, which is what I'm going to do. So there's automatically going to be a way that you are more developed. So I'm starting with women because I know this one a lot better, and I feel like I could give a lot better advice because I've experienced it like really quite a bit. So when we're talking about being feminine, we are consciously feminine, unconsciously masculine, right? So it helps to talk about this, like I said, in terms of, for women, the animus, which is unconscious masculine. So there's a tricky thing going on here where I want to say, well, females are going to have a tendency to be less developed in the masculine. But because this is something Carl Jung's wife talked about, I think, because we're living in a culture where masculine ways of being are more acceptable. I know there's plenty of people who are going to argue with that and say, like, no, everything's equal. It's not about, like, male-female equality. It's the fact that we live in a culture. If you're in the Western world, if you're in the more developed world, I think this is especially true. This is especially poignant. But we're living in a culture where masculine qualities are more favorable, and they are how people find success, typically. So if you're not sure what I mean, just look up masculine characteristics. Not going to go too into that. If you're brand new to this, like, watch some of my old videos to get caught up on that. So we're in a culture where all the masculine things are generally get you more success, get you more safety, get you more money, get you all of these things, right? So women are in this unique position where they are biased against their own nature. So while naturally you would think that a woman would be more developed in the feminine, and she kind of is, she's also biased against that because she knows it doesn't work well in the current system or your current family system, or like whatever, your workplace, whatever system, you know, there's a sense that it's not okay and it doesn't work well. So, I think women have this massive problem, which is being reflected all over the place in different ways societally, where they're like in this tense masculine, they're possessed by the animus all day, every day, basically. That's how they live. It's how they get things done. So this is perhaps eye-opening for any men who are watching this, and if you're wondering, like, why is my wife or girlfriend always so pissed off? Why is my mom always so... The answer to that is probably because she's a woman living as a man. Not like, you know, like gender. I mean, like, she's a woman living the life of a man with masculine ways of being, ways of going through the day, ways of making decisions, right? All of it has to be masculine, or so she's been taught. So, let's talk about symptoms. And then we'll talk about, like, what can be done, like, how do you develop, and etc. So, Pinterest. Pinterest is full of all of this cute stuff about organization, right? Women know this. If you're a woman and you go on Pinterest, you've probably seen a lot of stuff about organizing. There's this huge trend on the internet selling planners, productivity systems for women. These are all masculine things, by the way. Technically, they're, organization, planning, productivity, getting things done, making money, success, yada, 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 right? All, technically speaking, masculine things, when we're talking about energy, right? Not people, but energy. They're masculine things, but women are the ones who are interested in them. It's like a gajillion-dollar market, and it's all geared toward women, because women are the ones craving that sort of thing. Why are they craving it? Because they need that sort of development, right? Because the way they have that developed now is gonna kill them. So the way women currently have their masculine side developed right now, it's killing them. It's like insane. So so let's talk about what that looks like. Control, rigidity, hyper productivity, hyper organization, never resting, never being in flow, neglecting creativity. What else? The internal critic, right? The internal critic, as people call it, that is way more of a conversation in women's circles than it is in men's circles. Some men, it's totally a universal thing in a way, but the way I've heard women talk about the inner critic, it's like, whoa, I've never heard a man in my life talk about the inner critic like a woman does. The reason this is because when you have this deeply underdeveloped masculine, you've got dictator energy, right? Dictator energy is what results when you have A, this underdeveloped masculine, and B, you have to be masculine, right? So you are running on toxic fuel all day. You're never safe, you're never in flow, you're never relaxed. And so the tragedy here is that women don't get to live as women. It's a bit nuanced here because we're talking about development here, right? So what is the average woman? Not every woman is going to struggle with this. Some women are like great with this and they're not stressed and they're not having this problem. Wonderful. But a lot are. And so this will hit home for you if this is an issue for you. We're not just talking about we are talking about developing the masculine. That is something that women need to do. They need to learn its place. Okay. Creation. When you're creating something in your life, the creation energy has to lead and come first. The masculine comes in afterwards and structures it and finds use for it and says, how do we make this a thing, right? How do we make this like successful and concrete in the world, money, like all that stuff. So women need to learn against their own conditioning that the creation and the feminine comes first. I think this is true for everybody. Maybe, I don't know, it's debatable. But if you're having all those problems I just talked about, hyper self-controlling, you can't let loose, everything's rigid, you're exhausted, you're overproductive, but yet not getting anything done somehow, this is for you. You need to shift into the feminine leads, period. So everything is about creativity and flow and ease and receptivity and openness and blah, 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 blah. First, whether or not you believe that's going to work out if you distrust it, if you feel like it's unsafe, doesn't matter. You have to learn. It has to come first. Then the role of your masculine side is to just come in after all of that and create structure, create boundaries, create, like I said, figure out the how, right? So that is the process that you should probably be in for most things, for a lot of things. Long story short, for women, getting back in touch with their feminine and living by that first, no matter who, that's the whole thing first. No matter who's telling you you're stupid, like, this is the sort of thing that's going to get you potentially a lot of judgment and ridicule from people who are very brainwashed, right? Because doing things in a feminine way is nonsense, it's impractical, it's magical thinking, it's for stupid people, right? Because it's not of the mind. All these sorts of things that are going to come up. And don't be surprised if it's you telling yourself that. That's this crooked, weird, unconscious masculine. So remember we talked about the inner critic? That's you turning the masculine in on yourself. Masculine needs to take a back seat. It does need to develop. Like, you may need to learn some practical things. You may need to learn how to stick to systems. You may need to learn how to declutter your mind and get more organized. But all of that comes second to strong feminine development. And the feminine development shouldn't take work because it's conscious. It's already who you are. You're probably just suppressing it because of the culture, not because you innately would suppress that. What you would naturally suppress would be the masculine, right? Because you don't consciously identify as that. But because of the culture, because of the whole hustle thing and people not taking their vacation days anymore, like this whole Western cancerous hyper masculine nonsense we've got going on, you're gonna need to work with both. So yeah, look out for that dictator energy. That's the masculine gone crazy. Calm that down. Put it back in its place. It comes second. Feminine comes first. That development should be easy, should be fun, should feel like relief. Then let the masculine develop very naturally after that. Because when the feminine comes first and you live from that sort of energy first, the masculine can come in a lot easier and it makes sense. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but when the masculine comes in second, there's not that sense of spinning your wheels anymore. Because the masculine has something to do, It's kind of like overactive mind, that's the masculine spinning its wheels. It doesn't need to be doing that. You need to give it a job. And the feminine is going to be what gives it a job. So if you're not putting effort and, not effort, but if you're not living as feminine, creative, living your life in this mode of being, fluid, receptive, easygoing, blah, 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 set up your life. This is where your masculine comes in. Your masculine sets up your life to allow for that safe container. So, whether other people are serving that masculine role for you, or if you are kind of on your own by yourself and you have to do it yourself, either way, it needs to happen. So the masculine container creates the safe space. So this is you being practical, you getting shit done, so that you have that time and space to be feminine most of the time. That's what you're aiming for. Okay, part 2. Men or people who consciously express and identify as masculine. What's going on there? So, in this case, we have the anima, right? The feminine, which is unconscious. what I've seen here is total opposite energy. What does it look like when you are in the grip of your anima or your unconscious feminine as a man? One, these are just some possibilities. So some of these are going to sound really bad. Don't take offense. There's varying degrees of this. One, wishy-washiness. This sense of just like floating through life. Perhaps not a lot of responsibility, so maybe a bit of irresponsibility. When Carl Jung talked about the Peter Pan complex, this is what comes to mind. So what I've seen, the people who tend to fall in this trap are more spiritual men, more femininely developed men. It's just the case. I've seen it so many times. The trap being having this like unconscious feminine like dominating your life. So basically what happens is, instead of leading your life in this healthy masculine way, this unconscious feminine starts to rise up and just like create all this weird chaos. It can look like emotional volatility. If you've seen men who are sort of really down the rabbit hole and they're like abusive, you'll notice that they're just acting really crazy, irrational. I think a lot of men who commit crimes are committing it from this place of like really chaotic, unconscious, feminine stuff, but in a more benign way. Like dealing with this on a day-to-day level might look like wishy-washy. I don't have any goals. I can't make any decisions. I feel like I'm in a fog. This like no boundaries, like fluidity, but not in the way I just said women needed the fluidity. It's like fluidity so that there's just like nothing going on, no forward movement. This is a totally random example, but most people probably haven't seen this, but if you've happened to see that show Peep Show, it's like a random British comedy show. There's two guys in the show. One of them is super straight-laced and like rigid. His roommate is the exact opposite. It's like his exact shadow. So his roommate is like, he never makes rent. He's an aspiring musician, but he never gets anywhere with it. He dates these like controlling women who just sort of like knock him around and just leave him and come back whenever they want. He's very extremely idealistic. What else? Yeah, lack of follow through. Sulky. This is another big one. The sulkiness. Passive aggression. So, what needs to happen here? Kind of like I said with the women, both masculine and feminine need to be developed. I've known a lot of men, like I said, more spiritual men, and I've seen it literally at least 5 to 10 times, like just tons of times, where the same thing is going on with each one of them, right? And mostly what I want to say is that they need to develop their masculine. In a way, because the feminine is like unconsciously taking control, it already is somewhat developed, right? So they need to reacquaint themselves with masculine energy. Now, how I said with women, there's this particular wounding based on invalidating all this feminine energy stuff, and that's why they neglect it and blah, blah, blah. With men, there's always this wound about, I don't want to be the caveman guy who's like a predator and the CEO and like this big, bad, terrible man, right? So these more spiritual guys, they know that they don't want to be that. And so unconsciously, instead of just not being that they just like do away with masculine development, and they're just like, well, I'll just float around and be sort of like a hippie, is sort of what happens. Think about like the entire 60s movement and like what was wrong with it, like the dark side, or like what didn't work about the 60s movement, and apply that to an individual man or an individual who's like more masculine, and that is exactly, it's the same thing. Another thing I just realized, when men always complain about getting friend zoned, this is exactly why it's happening. And so men always tell this story that like women only like assholes, right? What women are like instinctually attracted to is masculine energy, right? Not necessarily predators and these caveman dudes, or sometimes it's that if the woman herself is very undeveloped, she will be attracted to that unhealthy masculine character who's like, you know, an asshole. But if not that, the average woman will be attracted to someone who is exhibiting clear masculine energy. So there's this big wound, right, with these guys, because they're all like sulky and they're like, I'm not like that, and so they're not gonna like me. And you are actually friend zoning yourself by refusing to embody what you actually are. So that's the big secret here about these more spiritual guys. Especially if you're one of these more spiritual guys and you would like a romantic relationship with a female and you don't have one, and you have a lot of female friends, this message is particularly for you. Masculine development is going to be the answer here. And doing that in a way, learning that you are that, and that you don't have to be the predator, and you don't have to be the caveman, and you don't have to be this like just idiot like Donald Trump type character, because that's not even real masculine anyway, right? So you're gonna do it the right way. You're gonna do it in a way where it's like healthy, and you're going to become even more of a magnet. I don't know why this turned into like dating advice, but it's just so relevant. You're gonna become even more of a magnet for women, and it's gonna be a lot healthier. Long story short, look into that masculine wound. Are you refusing to be masculine because you see it as you disidentify with it? It's a self-esteem thing. You feel like they're bad people and you don't want to be a bad person. Look into all that, because you got to get past that, and you got to develop what you already are, which is masculine, and it's going to feel better to do that. It's going to feel better than this wishy-washy, like I'm a hippie just floating through space sort of energy that tends to develop when men kind of like step back from their own masculine development. And then just, obviously not letting that feminine side like disappear. You can work on that too. You can do dream work. I think dream work is probably like really especially good for someone with the feminine unconscious, because it's much easier to be out of touch. This is just my opinion, what I've seen, kind of. It's much easier to be out of touch with how you feel when you have unconscious feminine, when you have an anima, right? So yeah, there still needs to be that feminine development. You still need to do some like dream work, and however you want to go about that, processing your feelings, getting in touch with your feelings, that it is still unconscious, right? So you do need to still put, energy into that. So, okay, here's the interesting thing that I just realized. With both of these stories, what is the point? What is the end result? The end result for each is that you develop more of what you consciously are, right? So the women need to relearn how to be feminine, even though it's like shunned and they're afraid to do it and all this stuff. They feel like it's not going to work. That's another big thing with women and developing their feminine side, is they feel like it's not going to work. At least I've had this issue, like, really bad, where it's like, oh, like, I can't be creative. That would be a waste of time. Like, my entire conscious identity is a waste of time. So I have to be in this, like, hyper man mode all the time, right? And again, what is the irony here? Same thing I said about the men. Being in this hyper man mode all the time, like this, I call it like a Hillary Clinton mode, where you're just like marching through life wearing a suit, and you're like, I do things, you know. It's just like, what does that do? It makes you, this is going to be controversial, it makes you unattractive to men, right? Because men are looking for women. So the same thing I said about the guys getting friend zoned, it's not because you're unattractive, if that's happening to you. Same with the women. It's not because you're undesirable, because you're like not woman enough or not man enough. It's because you're not demonstrating enough that you are feminine or masculine, whatever. So when other people see you and they're like, you know, looking for that, they don't instinctually get drawn to you because you're maybe not really displaying it that much, right? So that's possibly not relevant for everybody, but it's just something to think about if you are having those kinds of problems. So whatever energy you are consciously, that is the dominant energy you should be in if you want to be feeling good. And whatever energy is unconscious in you, if you have the Animus or you have the Anima, you just want to be like doing a little extra digging to find out what's going on there, because it's hidden, right? It's not going to be super obvious in your face. Okay, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and feel free to subscribe. Check out my one-to-one sessions if you want to work with me directly, and I will see you in the next video.